I never thought I'd be the guy to snoop on his own wife. But there I was, heart pounding, palms sweaty, crouched outside my in-laws' kitchen window like some cut-rate private eye. The warm summer air felt thick and oppressive, clinging to my skin as I strained to make out the hushed conversation inside. How did I end up here? It all started innocently enough. Emily and I had driven up to her parents' place for their annual 4th of July barbecue. It was the same old song and dance, her mom Betty fussing over the potato salad, her dad Jim manning the grill with military precision, cousins and neighbors milling about with red Solo cups. I'd been to enough of these shindigs over the years that I could predict exactly how the day would unfold. Betty would inevitably corner me to interrogate me about our plans for kids. Jim would regale anyone who listened with the same war stories he trotted out every year. And Emily's cousin Becky would get progressively drunker and louder as the night wore on, until she inevitably passed out face down in a lawn chair. But this year felt different somehow. Maybe it was the fact that Emily and I had just celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. Or maybe it was the way she kept shooting me these strange, furtive glances throughout the day. Whatever it was, there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite put my finger on. As twilight settled in and the fireflies started to blink leisurely in the yard, I found myself needing a break from the raucous laughter and drunken crooning of God Bless America. I mumbled some excuse about needing fresh air and slipped away from the party, wandering aimlessly through the overgrown backyard. The cicadas were in full chorus, their droning song filling the humid night. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the weird funk I'd been in all day. That's when I heard it. Emily's voice, drifting out from the kitchen window. She was talking to her mom in low, urgent tones. I knew I shouldn't listen in. But something in Emily's voice, a note of secrecy of conspiracy, rooted me to the spot. I inched closer, barely breathing. Just saying, honey, you're still young and gorgeous, Betty was saying. No harm in having a little fun now and then. What Mark doesn't know is one part of him. My breath caught in my throat. Were they talking about what I thought they were talking about? Emily's response was too quiet to make out. But Betty's next words came through crystal clear. Oh please, all men are suckers when it comes down to it. They have no idea what we get up to when they're not around. Why deny yourself a little excitement? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This couldn't be happening. Not Emily, not my Emily. But there was no mistaking Betty's meaning. She was encouraging my wife, my partner, my best friend to cheat on me. And Emily wasn't protesting. At least not that I could hear. I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling. Part of me wanted to burst into that kitchen and confront them both. But a larger part, the cowardly part, just wanted to pretend I'd never heard a thing. In the end, I didn't either. I retreated to the far corner of the yard, swigging beer after beer as I tried to make sense of what I'd overheard. By the time Emily came looking for me, I'd managed to plaster her on a halfway convincing smile. There you are, she said, wrapping her arms around my waist. I was wondering where you'd disappeared to. I held her back stiffly, searching her face for any sign of guilt or deception. But all I saw was my Emily, beautiful, kind-hearted Emily with her sparkling green eyes and dimpled smile. Just needed some air, I mumbled, ready to head home. She nodded, stifling a yawn. God, yes. If I have to listen to Uncle Pete's conspiracy theories for one more minute, I might actually lose it. I managed a weak chuckle as we said our goodbyes and piled into the car. Emily chatted animatedly the whole drive home, filling me in on all the family gossip I'd missed. I made the appropriate noises of interest, but my mind was a million miles away. As we got ready for bed that night, I watched Emily closely. Did her lingerie seem a little fancier than usual? Was that a new perfume she was wearing? Stop it, I told myself sternly. You're being paranoid. Emily loves you. She'd never. But Betty's words kept a cone in my head. All men are suckers. Was I just another sucker? I'd barely slept that night, tossing and turning as worst-case scenarios played out in my mind. By the time dawn broke, I'd come to a grim conclusion. I needed proof one way or the other. I couldn't confront Emily about what I'd overheard, not without seeming like a creep who eavesdropped on private conversations. No, I needed hard evidence, which meant I had to do the unthinkable. I had to spy on my own wife. The next few weeks were torture. I started noticing little things I'd overlooked before. The way Emily's eyes lingered a half-second too long on the handsome barista at our local coffee shop. How she'd started going to the gym more often, always returning with a healthy flush in her cheeks. The whispered phone conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Was I losing my mind? Or was the woman I loved slipping away right under my nose? I knew I was walking a dangerous line. If Emily ever found out I was suspicious, let alone actively investigating her, our marriage might never recover. But I couldn't shake the gnawing doubt that had taken root in my gut. So I did what any desperate, paranoid husband would do. I hatched a plan. It started small. I casually mentioned over dinner one night that work had been crazy lately. Johnson's really been writing me about this new account, I said, pushing my pasta around my plate. I might have to start putting in some late nights at the office. Emily's brow furrowed in concern. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Anything I can do to help? I shook my head, avoiding her eyes. Nah, it's fine. Just might not be around as much for a while. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Well, don't work too hard, okay? I worry about you. The genuine care in her voice made my stomach clench with guilt. What was I doing? But it was too late to back out now. The wheels were already in motion. Over the next couple of weeks, I gradually increased my work hours, claiming more and more late nights at the office. In reality, I was parked down the street from our house waiting. Nothing happened. Emily's routine seemed boringly normal. She went to work, went to the gym, and came home. No strange cars in the driveway, no suspicious visitors. I told myself I should be relieved, but the doubts still gnawed at me. What if she was just being careful? What if she was meeting someone during her lunch breaks or at the gym? I needed to up the ante. That's when I called in reinforcements. My buddy Mike owed me a favor, and he was just sleazy enough to go along with my half-baked scheme. Let me get this straight, he said when I laid out the plan. You want me to hit on your wife? I winced at his blunt phrasing. Not exactly. Just flirt a little. See how she responds. I'll arrange for you two to accidentally run into each other a few times. Mike eyed me skeptically, and you don't think this could backfire spectacularly? I run a hand through my hair, sighing heavily. Honestly? I don't know, but I need to know the truth one way or the other. Please, Nan, I'm going crazy here. He still looked dubious but finally nodded. All right, I'm in. But for the record, I think this is a terrible idea. Looking back, I should have listened to him. But I was too far gone, too consumed by my own insecurities and paranoia. I'd opened Pandora's box, and there was never going back now. The next phase of my ill-conceived plan kicked into gear a few days later. I'd volunteered to work a weekend shift, leaving Emily to her own devices. In reality, I was holed up in a coffee shop across from her favorite boutique, waiting for Mike to make his move. Right on cue, Emily emerged from the shop, arms laden with bags. And there was Mike, wearing the outfit we'd carefully selected to make him look like he'd just come from the gym. My hands clenched into fists as I watched him approach her, all easy smiles and casual charm. He was playing his part perfectly, the handsome stranger, gallantly offering to help with her bags. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Emily's body language. She seemed surprised at first, then flattered. She laughed at something Mike said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Was it a flirtatious gesture or just a nervous habit? Their interaction only lasted a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When they finally parted ways, I slumped back in my seat, heart pounding. What had I just witnessed? A harmless exchange between strangers or the first spark of something more? I spent the rest of the day in a fog, barely able to focus on anything. When I got home that evening, Emily greeted me with a kiss and a cheerful rundown of her day. And then the funniest thing happened, she was saying as she chopped vegetables for dinner. This guy offered to help me with my bags, and I swear he looked exactly like that actor from that movie we saw last month. What was his name again? I froze, my back to her as I pretended to rummage in the fridge. Oh, I managed, trying to keep my voice neutral. That's weird. She laughed, oblivious to my inner turmoil. I know, right? What are the odds? What were the odds indeed? I felt sick to my stomach as I listened to her recount the encounter, passing every word for hidden meanings. Was she telling me about it to allay suspicion? Or was it truly meant nothing to her? The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. Mike and I had arranged for him to run into Emily a few more times at the grocery store, at her favorite coffee shop, even at the gym. Each time I watched from afar, scrutinizing every smile, every laugh, every casual touch. And each time I grew more confused. Emily was undeniably friendly with Mike, even flirtatious at times. But she never crossed any clear lines. She didn't give him her number and didn't agree to meet up. It was driving me insane. If she was faithful, why did she seem to enjoy his attention so much? But if she was open to cheating, why hadn't she taken things further? I knew I was walking a dangerous line. My work was suffering, my friendships neglected. I was so focused on catching Emily in some imagined infidelity, that I was pushing her away in reality. Something had to give. And soon. The breaking point came on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I told Emily I had a work event, but in reality I was camped out at our local park. Mike had convinced her to meet him there under the guise of a charity walkathon he was organizing. I watched from behind a newspaper as they strolled along the path, deep in conversation. They looked comfortable together. Happy. Suddenly, Mike reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Emily's ear, the same gesture she'd made when they first met. My vision went red. Before I knew what I was doing, I was storming across the grass towards them. Emily's eyes widened in shock as she saw me approach. "Mark," she gasped. "What are you doing here?" The hurt and confusion in her voice should have stopped me in my tracks. But I was too far gone, weeks of suspicion and paranoia boiling over. "I could ask you the same thing." I spat. "Enjoying your little date?" Emily recoiled like I'd slapped her. "Date? What are you talking about?" Mike, to his credit, looked thoroughly ashamed. "Mark, man, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I snarled. Then, turning back to Emily. "I heard you and your mom talking at the barbecue. About how all men are suckers. About how I never know what you get up to behind my back." Emily's face was drained of color. You were eavesdropping on me." "I didn't mean to." I protested. "But I'm glad I did. Otherwise, how would I have known about this?" I gestured wildly between her and Mike. Emily's shock was rapidly morphing into anger. "Known about what exactly?" "That I made a new friend. That I had a conversation with someone other than you." "Oh, come on," I scoffed. "You expect me to believe this is all innocent? The private meetups, the flirting." "Flirting?" Emily's voice rose an octave. "Is that what you think this is?" Mike cleared his throat awkwardly. I think I should go." "No," Emily said sharply, grabbing his arm. "You're staying right here. Mark deserves to know exactly what's been going on." My stomach dropped. This was it, the moment of truth. Emily took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm herself. "Mark, I didn't know what you think you had at my parents' house, but I can assure you I have never cheated on you. Not once, not ever." "Then what?" She held up a hand, cutting me off. "Mike here, you idiot. He's been helping me plan your surprise birthday party." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "What?" Mike nodded, looking intensely uncomfortable. "It's true, man. I've been helping Emily coordinate with the venue, the caterer, all that stuff. We were meeting up to go over final details." I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. "But the flirting, the hair thing." Emily's laugh was bitter. "The hair thing is because I got my bangs trimmed, you unbelievable ass. I've been growing them out for months." Mike noticed because he actually pays attention to me, unlike my husband who's been too busy playing amateur detective to even look at me properly. The full weight of what I'd done came crashing down on me. I'd let my insecurity and paranoia run wild, concocting this whole insane scenario in my head. And for what? To almost ruin the best thing in my life. "Emily," I choked out. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking." But Emily wasn't done. The floodgates had opened and years of pent-up frustration came pouring out. "Do you have any idea how it feels?" she demanded. "To have the person who's supposed to love and trust you most in the world treat you like a criminal. To have your every move scrutinized and questioned. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could I possibly say to make this right? Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Mark. I've never once in all our years together even considered being with anyone else. But this I'm not sure I can forgive. With that, she turned on her heel and strode away, leaving me standing there with Mike, feeling like the world's biggest fool. Mike clapped a hand on my shoulder. For what it's worth, man, I really think you screw the pooch on this one. I couldn't even bring myself to be mad at him. He was right after all. I'd let my own insecurities poison the best thing in my life. And now, watching Emily's retreating figure grow smaller in the distance, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to make things right. Mike shifted awkwardly beside me. Look, man, I should probably go. But for what it's worth, Emily really does love you. She talked about you non-stop every time we met up. It was all Mark would love. And I can't wait to see Mark's face when he sees that. He shook his head. I hope you can fix this. I nodded numbly, barely registering his words as he walked away. I stood there for what felt like hours, replaying every moment of the past few weeks in my head. How have I gotten things so catastrophically wrong? Finally, I forced myself to move. I had to find Emily. I had to try to explain, to beg for forgiveness if necessary. I found her sitting on a bench near the duck pond, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. My heart clenched at the sight. I'd done this to her. Emily, I said softly, approaching cautiously. Can we talk? She looked up at me and the pain in her eyes nearly knocked me off my feet. I don't know, Mark. Can we? Or are you going to accuse me of having an affair with the ducks next? I winced at her biting sarcasm. I deserve that. I know I screwed up monumentally, and I'm not sure I can ever make it right. But please just let me try to explain. Emily sighed heavily, then scooted over on the bench. I took it as an invitation and sat down, careful to leave some space between us. I'm listening, she said flatly. I took a deep breath. What I did was inexcusable. I let my own insecurities and paranoia run wild, and I hurt the person I love most in the world in the process. But I need you to know that it wasn't because I don't trust you, or because I don't love you. It's because I love you so much that the thought of losing you terrifies me. Emily's expression softened slightly, but she remained silent. I plied on. When I overheard that conversation with your mom, it hit every insecurity I've ever had. I've always felt like I don't deserve you, like someday you're going to wake up and realize you could do so much better. And hearing your mom say those things, it was like my worst fears were being confirmed. Mark. Emily interrupted, her voice gentler now. My mom was drunk and talking nonsense. I shut her down right after you left. I would never ever cheat on you. I nodded miserably. I know that now. I should have known then. But instead of talking to you about my fears, I let them fester and grow until they turned into this. I gestured vaguely. I convinced myself that if I could catch you in the act, it would hurt less than being blindsided later. How messed up is that? Emily shook her head, a mix of frustration and sadness on her face. Why didn't you just talk to me? We've always been able to talk about everything. I was ashamed, I admitted. Ashamed of my insecurities, ashamed of how I'd invaded your privacy. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to come clean. I ran a hand through my hair. I know it's no excuse. What I did was wrong on every level. I hope you can understand where it came from, even if you can't forgive me. Emily was quiet for a long moment, absently tearing a leaf into tiny pieces. Finally, she spoke. I understand where it came from. But Mark, you have to know how much this hurts. It's not just that you didn't trust me. It's that you went to such extreme lengths to try to catch me in a lie. You involved other people in your schemes. You made me feel like I was crazy for weeks, always watching me, always suspicious. Her voice broke. Do you have any idea how that feels? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I'm so sorry, Emily. I never meant to make you feel that way. I was so caught up in my own head that I didn't stop to think about how my actions were affecting you. She nodded, wiping away a stray tear. I know you're sorry. And I know you love me. But Mark, this can't happen again. Ever. We need to be able to trust each other completely, or this marriage won't work. I know. I said quickly. I swear to you, Emily, I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you if you'll let me. I'll go to therapy. I'll work on my insecurities, whatever it takes. I can't lose you over this. Emily reached out and took my hand, squeezing it gently. I don't want to lose you either. But we have a lot of work to do to rebuild what you've broken here. I nodded eagerly. Anything. I'll do anything. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Well, for starters, you can help me salvage this disaster of a surprise party. I've got 50 guests coming next weekend and no birthday boy. I laughed weakly, relief washing over me. If she was willing to joke even a little, there was hope. I think I can manage that. Although I'm not sure I deserve a party after all this. Emily's expression turned serious again. You're right, you don't. But I didn't spend the last 3 months planning this thing just to call it off now. Besides, she added a mischievous glint in her eye. Now I get to spend the whole party dropping hints about what an idiot you've been. That's a gift in itself. I groaned, but I was smiling. This was the Emily I knew and loved. Quick-witted, a little sarcastic, and always able to find humor even in the darkest moments. I really am sorry. I said again, squeezing her hand. I love you so much, Emily. I promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust again. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt some of the tension leave her body. I love you too, you big dummy. Just no more amateur detective work, okay? Leave that to the professionals. I chuckled softly. Deal. We sat there for a while, watching the ducks paddle across the pond, neither of us speaking. There was still a lot to work through, a lot of trust to rebuild. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park, Emily stood up and held out her hand. Come on, she said. Let's go home. The drive home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Emily fiddled with the radio, settling on a station playing soft jazz. As we pulled into our driveway, she turned to me. You know, she said, a hint of amusement in her voice in a weird way. I'm almost glad this happened. I raised an eyebrow. You're glad I turned into a paranoid lunatic and nearly ruined our marriage? She smacked my arm lightly. No, you idiot. I'm glad because, well, now everything's out in the open. All your insecurities, all my frustrations. We can actually deal with them instead of letting them fester. I nodded slowly. I guess that's true. Still, I wish I'd found a less dramatic way to bring it all up. Emily laughed. Yeah, well, you never do anything halfway, do you? Come on, let's go inside. I think we both could use a drink after today. As we entered the house, I was struck by how normal everything looked. The same photos on the walls, the same throw pillows on the couch. It was hard to believe that just a few hours ago, my whole world had been turned upside down. Emily headed for the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I followed, leaning against the counter as she poured. So, I said, accepting the glass she handed me. Where do we go from here? She took a long sip of wine before answering. Well, first things first, we need to have a long, honest conversation about trust and communication. No more bottling things up, no more assuming the worst. Deal? I nodded emphatically. Absolutely. I'm an open book from here on out. Good, Emily said. And I think we should consider couples therapy. I blinked in surprise. Emily had always been resistant to the idea of therapy, preferring to work things out on her own. The fact that she was suggesting it now showed just how deeply my actions have shaken her. Of course, I said quickly, whatever you think will help. I'm all in, Emily. 100%. She smiled, but it was a tired smile. I know you are. That's why I think we can get through this. But Mark, she set down her wine glass and looked me directly in the eye. I need you to understand something. What you did. It wasn't just a mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a betrayal of trust. It's going to take time for me to feel completely secure with you again. Her words stung that I knew they were true. I understand, I said softly. And I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll earn back your trust, Emily. I swear it. She nodded, then surprised me by stepping forward and wrapping her arms around me. I held her back tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "I'm still mad at you," she mumbled into my chest. I chuckled softly. "I know, you have every right to be." She pulled back slightly, looking up at me with a mix of exasperation and affection. "You're lucky I love you so much, you know that." "Believe me," I said fervently. "I know exactly how lucky I am." The night of the party arrived, and I have to admit, Emily had outdone herself. Our backyard had been transformed into a twinkling wonderland, with fairy lights strung between the trees and candles flickering on every surface. Our friends and family milled about, laughing and chatting, the air filled with the smell of grilled food and the sound of music. As I made my way through the crowd, accepting birthday wishes and hugs, I kept finding myself drawn back to Emily. She was radiant in a deep blue dress, her hair swept up in an elegant twist, but it was more than just her physical beauty that captivated me. It was the way she threw her head back when she laughed, the animated gestures she made as she told the story, the warmth in her eyes when she caught me looking at her. Had I ever doubted this woman? How had I let my own insecurities blind me to the depth of her love? As the party wound down and our guests began to leave, Emily sidled up to me, slipping her arm around my waist. "So," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Was it worth all the sneaking around in the subterfuge?" I laughed, pulling her clothes. "Absolutely. Although I have to say, I'm a little disappointed you didn't hire a male stripper to really test my trust issues." Emily smacked my chest lightly, but she was grinning. "Don't tempt me, mister. I might just save that for your 40th. We stood there for a moment, watching as a lot of our friends drove away, leaving us alone in the glow of the fairy lights. "Thank you," I said softly, turning to face her. "Not just for the party, but for everything. For giving me another chance. For believing in us even when I didn't." Emily reached up, cupping my face in her hands. "We're in this together, remember. For better or for worse. Although I have to say, if you ever pull a stunt like that again, I might just take my mom's advice and run off with the pool boy." I winced. "Ouch. Low blow, Mrs. Anderson." She grinned, then stood on her tiptoes to kiss me. It was a soft kiss, sweet and familiar, but with an undercurrent of passion that made my heart race. "I love you," she murmured against my lips. Paranoid tendencies and all. I wrapped my arms around her, holding our clothes. "I love you too, more than you could ever know."